Okay, the last we left off on episode 3 was that Hohenberger had escaped prison. He had kidnapped the couple, the newlyweds named Du Bois, and was caught and put back in San Quentin, not really given any extra time. And I don't know why, but that's where he is. And then he gets paroled, if you remember that from the last episode. So after 1, 2, 3, 4 sexual assaults and 5 kidnaps, Robert Hohenberger is paroled from San Quentin prison because apparently he had done his time. And according to the officials in charge, justice system, maybe he's a changed man. Well, we're going to see about that as we go forward today. He is released on August. That's all I have. August of 1977. And going through some old police reports, I did find that he had a address in I always want to say Palm Springs, but I don't think it's that. It's Palm Desert, California. And I don't know the procedures back then with parole and probation, but if he's not maxed out on his sentence, which I don't believe he could be because he was sentenced to 6 months to life, I don't understand how he wouldn't have any aftercare in place, meaning a halfway house that he has to either live in, probation that he has to report to, something to that effect, but I don't see it anywhere. I just see that he's released in August of 77. And he goes to Palm Desert for whatever reason. That's where he's from, where he has family members, whatever it is. That's where he goes. And maybe it's because that's where he has to stay in state. That could be certainly a part of his parole and probation or in a certain county. But whatever it is, in August of 77, he's paroled and released from San Quentin, goes to Palm Desert. On October 13th of 77, so a month later, 2 months later, he strikes again. So he is not 2 months out of prison doing a 4-year bid, maybe even 6-year. Didn't teach him anything. Well, it can't teach him, right? He has a disease. Just like alcoholism. This is a disease. Now, I'm not saying we should feel pity for him because he can seek help. He chooses not to. What he wants to do is what quenches that sexual thirst, and that is to rape and kidnap. Now, in this instance, on October 13th, 1977, now pay particular attention to these details, and I'll point them out to you. It was a Thursday. When I point like this, that means it's important. At approximately 10:15 p.m., 22-year-old white female was standing in front of a building of the grounds of the College of the Desert, located in Palm Desert, California, and she had just attended a night class at the college. Hohenberger walked past the female, and she noticed that he was looking at her. Isn't that exactly the same thing that he did in the last episode with the couple that he abducted with the knife? He walked past and then came back. He does the exact same thing here. He turned and walked up to her, grabbed her around the waist, and put a small pistol into her side, cocked the hammer back, which tells you it's a revolver. Hohenberger told her to hold her books in front of her so no one could see the gun. He forced her to his vehicle, which was parked near the school cafeteria. Hohenberger opened the door of the driver's side, told her to get in, pushed her in. She's on the floorboard on the passenger side, facing the seat. And she's told to have her hands placed on the seat so he could see them. Now, there's a lot of detail in this, and what I'm reading from is a police report. A police, it's not an official report, but it is I don't know what you call it, an annotation of the crimes that he committed. But it's by officials that investigated the case, so you know that they're facts. And that's so important. Get the facts, not hearsay, not things from other sources. Get the facts. So some of this is going to get pretty graphic, but I think it's important to hear it if we want to learn about the progression, how someone becomes a serial killer. After he abducted her, he drove away, drove a few miles, stopped on the side of the road. He took a wet cloth. Now, what does that tell you right off the bat? It tells me it's premeditated. Now, why he has a wet cloth? It's not chloroformed. It's a wet cloth. Why? What did he learn, either in previous rapes and kidnapping, or what did he learn when he was in college, meaning when he was in San Quentin? Did someone tell him about using a wet towel? And what is the reasoning for that? To be honest with you, I haven't dwelled on it too much, so I haven't come up with any reasons for that. You know, maybe it's easier to tie. I don't know. I don't know what the reason is for that. Remember, this is well before DNA is ever established, so it has nothing to do with that. But for some reason, he's using a wet rag. He took a wet cloth and tied the victim's hands behind her back. Up until that time, he had just had the pistol pointed at her. But once he has her hands tied, he put the pistol away. He pulled into a shopping center and appeared to have made a telephone call. Now, that's the second time that I know for sure that he did that. He did that with the couple as well. And I think he did it previously, if I remember correctly. You know, is it an actual call or is it a fabrication to intimidate them more? Hey, I made a call. If anything, if you tell on me, something's going to happen to your family. He returned to the vehicle and resumed driving. While driving, the offender asked the victim when was the last time that she had sex. She told him never. Hohenberger told her. And these are in quotes. So you're a virgin. I can't believe that. Not in this day and age. Well, let's begin your education. How demented and sick is that? Hohenberger then rubbed his hands under the victim's chin and stuck his right thumb into her mouth. Start sucking, he said. The victim complied, and he told her to suck harder. The offender had unzipped his pants, and the victim noticed that he had an erection. Okay, so when I'm reading this and I'm highlighting certain things that stick out to me, that was one. He has an erection. Because remember previously, he couldn't get an erection. So he used his fingers to sexually assault. But he has an erection. He told the victim again to start sucking and held the steering wheel with his right hand. He used his left hand to force the victim to perform oral copulation. This is trivia, but sometimes it's in the details to me that tells me that Hohenberger is more than likely right-handed. Now, that could come into use later if you have a body, let's say, that has stab wounds, and the stab wounds are to the victim's left side. You could extrapolate from that that the offender is right-handed. The offender did not climax, but said to the victim that she could take a rest. She advised that Hohenberger questioned her about college, the football team, baseball teams, etc. Now, this is intriguing to me because in all of the people that he's abducted, there's been, long periods of time, 5.5 hours, 6.5 hours. All of it is not sexual activity. He's got to fulfill that uncomfortable silence. A lot of offenders will remain that, just silent. Tell the victim, shut up, don't make any noise, and that's it. But Hohenberger likes the small talk. That could give you a glimpse into his personality. Could also tell you that maybe he wants to be seen as a good guy. But what he talks about is of importance. Here, he talks about the football team, baseball team. He's talking sports. Now, you say to yourself, well, why is that important? Well, let's say that you're investigating an offender. You don't know who it is. And you're talking to a witness, and they're like, yeah, this Bobby guy that I know kind of matches the description, but I don't think so. But, he's big into sports. He likes baseball and football, is always talking about. Well, you have a lead then. Okay, Bobby, Robert, likes sports. Let's go talk to him. So, again, it's attention in the details. So about an hour later, Hohenberger pulled off the side of the road. He put the victim into the rear seat and took her pants and panties off, just like he did the school teacher in the very first rape that we covered. He then removed his shoes and pants, forced her legs apart, and attempted to penetrate her with his penis. He was unsuccessful and inserted his fingers into the victim's vagina. He's done this before. The victim advised that Hohenberger could not get a full erection, and he blamed it on her. Now, don't you find that interesting? Why he's kidnapping, okay, he's got her tied up. She notices he has an erection. But now that he has her, and he's actually committing the act of rape, he can't get an erection. So does that tell you anything about this individual? Well, it tells me that he gets sexual gratification, not exactly from the rape, but from the kidnapping. Does that make sense to you? It's not uncommon. It's just like, say, John Wayne Gacy, who killed the 30-something boys and put them under his crawl space in Chicago. The act of murder is what fulfills the sexual gratification. That's what gets him aroused. So in this case, it appears to me, based off of these great details, that the kidnapping, the excitement of that, is what gets him sexually aroused, and not the actual act of rape. Although I am positive that plays into it, and he does get sexual fulfillment from that. But again, remember what I said earlier. Does he have hatred towards women because he can't get an erection? Well, I think a little bit of that does come into play because he blames the victim for this. So he can't get an erection. He blames it on her. He puts his pants back on, and he drove about 4 miles up the road. He attempted to rape her again, but again, he could not get an erection. So he used his fingers for about 30 minutes. Hohenberger then put the victim back into the front seat and told her, "We're going to get this done one way or another." So by that, what does he mean? Well, I'm sure it means for him to climax, have an erection and an orgasm, and to forcefully penetrate her with not his fingers, his penis. That's the mission. That's what he wants. So he drove away. He made the victim perform oral sex on him for 15 to 20 minutes. He then drove to a picnic cover and placed, I have this circled, a wet gag in the victim's mouth. Again, why is it wet? What's the difference? I haven't come across that before. So hopefully somebody out there knows that and will tell me. But it certainly shows premeditation. You know what I mean? Why else would you have a wet rag in your car unless it's raining and you use it to wipe off? I guess there are reasons, but I don't think there are anything but nefarious reasons to have this in his car. He wet those rags on purpose. He put the wet gag in the victim's mouth. He placed her in the rear seat and again attempted to rape her, but was unsuccessful. He used his fingers again. Hohenberger then removed a wool blanket from the vehicle, which he placed on a picnic table. The victim was ordered to lay on the table, and then after about 5 minutes, he completed intercourse with her. He dressed. He allowed the victim to dress. He told her that he was going to take her home and threatened to take care of her and her family. Now, again, in this little sentence that I just read you, something stands out to me, and that is that he allowed the victim to dress. We are going to see that when he goes to Louisiana and does some nefarious deeds there. It bugged me. I couldn't make sense of something, and I'll get to it when we get to that part, but it has to do with clothing of victims. He told her that he was going to take her home and threatened to take care of her and her family. Hohenberger dropped the victim off near her residence and drove away. Now, what that doesn't tell me is how does he know where he lived? He abducted her from the college. I don't think that he knew who she was. I think it was more of an opportunity. Maybe he had scouted her out there at the college, had his eyes set on her, no matter what it was. But she had to have told him, I would like to know this, where she lived. If she didn't tell him, and she could have had a driver's license on her, he could have got the address from there, could have asked her, whatever it was, but I would like to know that detail. Because if she didn't provide any of that, well, he was stalking her and she was certainly targeted. So that incident then was reported to Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Does that sound familiar? The exact same place where he worked 10 years ago, 11 years ago, before his prison stint. It's where he worked during his first rape in 1966, May 8th, of the school teacher. The victim advised that Hohenberger forced her to show him names and addresses in the telephone book. Okay, so I have this highlighted because forced the victim to show him names and addresses in the telephone book. Whose name? Whose addresses? Why? Where is the telephone book? Was that in the car? Or was it done when he stopped to make a call? So I have that highlighted because that's very curious to me. So that was October 13th. She didn't know who it was. She just reports that she was raped and brutally held for like 5 hours. All this was done to her. So he abducted with a gun again, just like he had done previously. Again, not with the couple, but that he had done to the Laguna Beach, girls, and also he was on duty with Riverside Sheriff's Auxiliary Office when he abducted a school teacher with a gun. So a gun seems to be his preferred method here. That was October 13th. He's not done. So October 31st, which is a Monday, another incident began at the College of the Desert. So he's going back to the same college he abducted and raped this previous girl from. A female student at the college was walking from one of her classes at approximately 10:45. Exact same time as he abducted the first girl. A different day, but the exact same time. He approached the female from the rear and pulled a gun on her. He cocked the hammer back and he grabbed her by the torso. The victim began to struggle to get away. Hohenberger told her to stop or I'll kill you. Just come on. The victim stated that Hohenberger forced her to the area of the administration building. The victim stated that she was going to faint and fell on the ground. Hohenberger then told her, I'll give you 2 seconds to get up or I'll kill you. The victim managed to escape and advised that she ran in a zigzag fashion to avoid being shot, screaming as she ran. The victim stated Hohenberger had told her that he was going to blow her head off during the struggle. A male subject came up at this point and saw the victim and Hohenberger, at which time he pursued Hohenberger to his vehicle. This male approached the vehicle and got a partial license plate number and turned it over to the police. The vehicle description was the same that was given by the victim that had fled the abduction and raped. A short time later, an officer spotted that vehicle matching Hohenberger's description and attempted to stop. A chase ensued, with speeds reaching 90 miles per hour. The vehicle became stuck in the sand. Hohenberger fled and was not apprehended, but the vehicle was impounded. All the witnesses were shown a photo lineup of 6 suspects, and it was determined that Hohenberger was the subject involved in both rapes. This, combined with physical evidence discovered in the vehicle, convinced authorities Hohenberger was the perpetrator of both incidents. So he got away. He couldn't be located, and warrants were issued for his arrest. Hohenberger now makes the decision to flee. Okay? He knows, listen, I just was in a police chase. Okay? They're chasing me for a reason. I more than likely am on parole or probation, and I haven't confirmed that, but with him just being released 2 months previous, I would guess that he was. He knows right now, no matter what, he's going back to jail. Okay, so he decides to flee. Now, there is some indication that I've gotten that Hohenberger steals a car. And the victim he stole the car from, he murdered with a knife. Now, I've heard this. I have not seen it anywhere. But it comes from a very credible law enforcement source. But of all the police reports that I've read, which are quite a bit, I saw nothing about it. So I want to look into that further. But he continues on here saying, further investigation revealed that on November 1st, so the very next day, Hohenberger's sister, Linda, has her last name here, but I don't feel the need to put that in there since she's still alive, took clothing to him at a rest stop on Interstate 10, 13 miles east of Indio, California. It says here about the stolen vehicle. A vehicle stolen by Hohenberger at Palm Springs, California on October 31st, 1977. So after he flees police, he steals a vehicle. That was also recovered along Interstate 10 in the vicinity of Benson, Arizona. So he has this police chase after attempting to abduct the second college student. His car gets stuck. He flees on foot. At some point, he steals another car. That night, the next day, he meets his sister at a rest area who brings him clothing. And I do believe, although it doesn't say in here, and I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but I remember seeing or hearing that she also provided him a weapon, a gun, a .22 revolver. That may be not true, and it may be, I know for a fact that I read that the pistol, the revolver that he used to kill himself later in Tacoma, Washington, was registered to his sister. So maybe I'm confusing. Maybe he had it all along. I'm not sure. But that's what I want to give you. But the stolen car was recovered in Benson, Arizona. I would like to know if the owner of that stolen car was murdered, as I have heard, because it's very important. First of all, as far as I know, he's never killed yet. 1. 2, he's never killed with a knife that I know at all. So it's very imperative to figure that out. And I have somebody working on that, but if somebody else knows, let me know. So, he's out of prison less than 2 months. He abducts, attempted abduction of one. He abducts and rapes another. And we have a whole September there. Do you think he was completely clean during that September? Suppressing that urge? And then October comes and he can't do it any longer and he acts on it? Or do you think there was victims in September? I went back through all the news articles that I could find in Palm Desert for September and first part of October to see if I could find any unknown victims. And I couldn't find any. Tell you, I was surprised there was a lot of sexual assaults through those newspapers that I was reading. And I was like, holy man, they're not all done by Hohenberger. It just goes to show you, and I try to explain this to some people, they don't seem to understand how sex is such a prime, it's primitive. You know what I mean? You can't get it out of your system. It's ingrained in our DNA. Whether it's to procreate or whatever, why God gave it to us, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But it's such a strong urge that people rape all the time. Now, yes, I know a lot of it has to do with power and control, but that's secondary. That's secondary to a person's needs. Sex is much stronger. And that's why a lot of these crimes are sexual related. Not just Hohenberger's, a lot of others that I've investigated. But he is, so far, He has not progressed to murder that I know about, that we know about, that police know about. It's still all about sexual assault and kidnapping. Okay? Before I started this, I thought that the sexual assault aspect of this, of his reign of terror, was the primary motive. And it still very well may be, but this kidnapping thing, I think, has a lot to do with his sexual motivation. I think that's what gets him off. More than the rape. More than the power control. I've got control over you and I can sexually assault and rape you at any time. He has that. I can see it. But I'm starting to wonder if that is secondary to taking somebody forcefully against their will. Because that seems to get him sexually excited. Anyways, he escapes. He escapes police. He is now met his sister at a rest area, stolen a car, and now he's made the decision, I'm out of here. So long, California. Where is he going to go? He's got 49 other states that he can choose to go. Well, he's not going to go the whole way across the country, but he is going to go to Louisiana, and there are a ton of states in between. So, on November 1st, he leaves California. By November 8th, at least by November 8th, he is in Arizona where he ditches that car. What's he get into next? You know what I mean? I don't know. But on November 28th, he's in Louisiana. So you have a month there of where he possibly is just traveling, but he's staying somewhere. Okay? There's going to be a crime, I believe, between California, Arizona, Louisiana, in that travel. Probably not murder, but it's probably another sexual assault or two. Because remember, October 13th, and then he tried again October 31st. So that urge for him to do what he does is coming quicker and quicker. He's not suppressing it. So do you think he's going to wait from November 1st to November 28th to strike again? I think there's one in there at least. So he arrives in the Morgan City area. And we're going to pick up on that in the next episode. Because now things have really escalated in the life of Robert Hohenberger. He's now a fugitive. He's wanted in California. As we learn later on, in less than a year's time, he is not going to go back to prison. Whether he told somebody that or not, that was the decision that he has made. But as we're going to see, his crimes now, once he arrives in Louisiana, are going to escalate. And now it really is the why. This is what really has me intrigued once he arrives here. because I've talked to his co-workers, and one in particular, listen, he was a super nice guy, jack of all trades, could do anything. He could fix cars, the body, the engine. He could weld. He could paint. He could do everything he did was good. And he was so nice. Never would I have thought that he was involved in this. Never. That intrigues me. Here, you have a guy who's not only a sexual predator turned murderer, he is been to prison for 5-6 years, been in law enforcement, was in a police chase, left, fled the area, comes to this new area and becomes no longer Robert Hohenberger. He becomes Frank Henry Green. And with that, it seems that he's developed not only a whole new name, a whole new air about him. He doesn't drink. The co-worker I talked to said that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. 99% of the people that are down here, especially in this area, workers, drank. Frank Green, he didn't drink at all. Shocking. So nice. So polite. Work. All the time. But yet, I know from his police reports and his own statement in California before he was arrested, he had stated after he sexually assaulted the girls on Laguna Beach that he went and bought vodka and he was drinking freely. So he drank, but all of a sudden now in Louisiana, he's not drinking anymore. A lot of other changes, a lot of other things that Frank Green, also known as Robert Carl Hohenberger, is going to do that is in character, but out of character. And we're going to get into all that in the next episode. I want to talk about his victims there, one by one. Mary Roderman, body never found. Okay, I want to look at that case. Maybe Hohenberger didn't do it. The only evidence I see against him is that he had a telephone book that had his phone number, her phone number underlined or circled. Well, listen, that's pretty good evidence. Okay, I'm not saying it's not, but let's look into that. Let's see if there's anything that we learned in the previous episodes that we can apply to her case. And then we're going to look at the abduction of Bridget's sons and Mark Cannella. What can we learn from that? And obviously Cindy Cannella is going to appear and give her insight of what took place. She knows it better than anybody there. And then we're going to look at the Gold and Adams case and the missing persons from there. See what we can learn. And then we'll close out that time in Louisiana and how he flees it once again. And how he's miraculously caught in Tacoma, Washington. And why he was there, according to a co-worker. And then we're going to get into some outlier cases where Robert Hohenberger is a potential suspect and why he should be considered a potential suspect in some of them. And something that a co-worker told me that seemed like a minute detail that doesn't matter at all about sunglasses that raised my eyebrow right away, and I wrote it down because it may tie to a huge case an unsolved case from 1966 that we'll be looking at. So that's it for today's episode. Hey, thank you for everybody who's contacted, and sent me emails, especially the ones that will help out Cindy Cannella and the other victims' families. There have been other victims' families that reached out to me as well and given information. So I apologize up front about bringing all this up. I don't like to do that and hurt, obviously, other victims' family members. But sometimes they want this brought up because they are left with the why, such as Cindy Cannella. So that is the reason to do this and to learn from Hohenberger and apply that knowledge that we learn to other unsolved cases that we look at. So that's the reason, and I thank all of you who have come forward and given me information, especially the co-worker. Again, I don't want to mention any names because there's no need to, He was nice enough to come forward and say, this is what I know. This is how he was. I played basketball with him. Oh, well, that's interesting to me because he talked about sports with one of the girls. So all those things, help me build a picture of what Hohenberger was like. And he really seems to have been a Jekyll and Hyde. But we'll get into that more when we now reach Louisiana and his crime spree there with 5 missing people. Thanks for watching. Mains out.